Thanks, John. Righty, I wonder if we could make a start, please. Could I have order? Right. Where's Paku? Thank you, Paku. You're the man. I'm being hurried up by my colleagues, so I'm just transferring the pressure, Cobber. So, so Paku, thank you. Sorry, could I have order, please? Sorry, could I have some quietness in the room? Thank you. Oh gosh, I'm losing touch here, Parker. I don't know. I must be right. Thank you, Parker. It's great to have you here. Really, it's your show for about 2 or 3 papers. So let's start with the first one, the risk report. Appreciate that.
Through the chair, ask that the report be read, is taken as read. I've got 4 strategic risks that we'll be speaking to today, with one cybersecurity being reported separately in the meeting later. The first risk that we have off the cab is, or the first strategic risk rather, is asset management. And by and large, Glenn is the responsible risk owner for this particular risk. We have assessed, done an initial assessment on this risk as moderate. And you'll see in the paper that we've got, there's a list of components that we assess that risk against. There is a specific key action around an independent maturity review, and see that we're on track in terms of continuous improvement, specifically around this risk. And I will possibly bring up a full comprehensive bow tie risk assessment through following that maturity review. So are there any questions on that particular?
Thank you. And Glenn, thank you. I just need to be reminded of your name. Thank you for being here. It's great to actually have one of the risk owners here with one of these reports, which is superb. So members, do we have questions for either Parker or Glenn at this stage? I do. And probably, so Glenn, you're responsible around asset management, correct? Yes. Brilliant. Okay, that's good. Because I like, this is actually one of the clearest assessments I've seen of an asset management risk, which is really good. So I take it out of this, there will be an action plan that comes out of it. I picked up the reading in the commentary, correct?
So the 3 actions that we've noted at the bottom are going to get us to a more detailed plan. So the key one right now, which we're partway through, is the maturity assessment, which is a more nuanced and structured approach than the high-level risk report we have here.
Yes.
So they'll give us a baseline and a gap analysis. Following that, we, in support of the CE's KPIs, will be developing an improvement plan. And one of the key success factors for that improvement plan will be to allocate resourcing against the improvement items, because that's in councils it's really common to see aspirational plans that don't drive improvement, and that will feed into the annual plan process, because there will be a risk and resourcing tension around that plan, which needs to be, staff will crack on with implementing the items that they're resourced to deliver on. That's at a really high level how we're moving the organisation forward. We've stood up an asset management steering group in the last 12 months, so with relevant GMs as well. So I think a bit of a change in how we've approached asset management in the years prior.
From your experience, Glenn, how long do you, I mean, I'm always, well, no, I'm not, actually I am in this situation wanting to put a bit of pressure. When's this going to be finished by? And you're suffering from a person that's getting old now, and I've always heard asset management functions say we need better data, we need to improve our data, we're not mature, we'll never know it. Because I want to come back to the planning risk, which is or dimension of this, which is the, shall we say, the one that worries me for various reasons I'll come to.
Mhm.
But actually, what I think you're hinting at is that there will be the need for some level of maturity steps. But how quickly? I mean, we've got another LTP coming up. We're going to have it done by then.
No, I can promise you no.
Well, thank you for being honest. I don't know if I like the answer, but I'll. Yeah, okay. Keep going.
There's two things fighting against it. So one is there's a number of moving parts in this, and so you tend to tackle the lowest hanging fruit first. But to get the whole of the system humming, that's a 5, 6, 7 year journey on the assumption that it's not resource constrained along the way. So there's some organizational change elements, there's some systems changes, there's a number of things that mean it can't be done in a year or two.
Okay, look, I appreciate that, and I did like the way you talked before that the program will bring a risk resource probably discussion that we need to have in terms of actually can we focus on it. So that's really good. I've got some more questions, but I got Dali. I think Terry wants to ask questions. So Dali first.
Thanks for the report, and I'm really happy to see 2 of the risks identified around planning and the reference to the mana and financial situation of our grandchildren. I think that's a really good point. But also the silos in council, and that's something that I've discussed with several staff members as well in terms of where things are getting lost. And I don't know that I see, there will be a more detailed action plan, and I appreciate that, but in that little summary of actions, doesn't say about, which is kind of getting operational, sorry, Aileen, but whether or not there is a plan of how those people can work together and coordinate around projects. Did that make sense?
I think what I heard was silos get in the way of staff doing things well.
Silos council reduce coordination between teams, result in misalignment over key areas such as growth of financial.
Oh, okay, yes.
I would even take that down to project level where, for example, there's the developer wants to put sections in, planning department says this is a really good idea, it fits all our provisos. Have we talked to our water and waste services people? Have we got them around the table and actually talked about the implications and what it would cost the ratepayer to upgrade to accommodate this subdivision? So it's that sort of thing.
Can I just be careful? Dali, I appreciate your question. We're talking about risk and asset management at this stage. You've broadened it quite substantially, which is a good question, but I just wonder if we could focus around asset management at this stage. I think that's a bigger question for somewhere else.
It is under.
Yeah. So it is I'm trying to figure out how to answer succinctly. We do have growth as an area that we're not a big growth council like Waipa, Waikato. So we do tend to be a little bit more ad hoc in our planning in that space, which is why it's sometimes our systems aren't as well. We're not dealing with it as frequently. So we do tend to sometimes not always join the dots. And in terms of a plan to address that, we've got a new structure coming, and potentially some of the resourcing. The reality is that as an organisation, we're more geared towards operating rather than planning. And so when a planning question comes along, sometimes people are having to work outside their warehouse a little bit on it.
Thank you, Graham. Jerry.
Yes, so I remember when Amon came on board here and we threw some money at software package for asset management some time ago. It does seem to stretch out and be a long time. But under the water's done well, have we done that work around our assets for the three waters before? Would that be part of the reporting package to tell them exactly what we've got? Is that part of that package? And has that been done?
So I might defer to Mo on this in terms of he's been leading the Water's Done Well. Our asset data, just the core data around what we have and where it is and how big it is the area where we're most mature. So we have two staff who that is their job, is to put that data
Underground and above ground?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So we have staff specifically tasked with that. It's the challenge that we have is the next piece after that is when you've got data, how do you turn that into wisdom? And that's where we're not as well resourced for that.
So my question was around the three waters, is that data available then?
Yes.
It is all, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate that. Any other questions? Thank you for that, Chair, because I think that was getting close to my question. I mean, we're talking asset management data and maturity, and I'd like your point turning it into wisdom. And that's why I'd certainly appreciate Deli's question around focusing on planning. I'm planning around about asset data and having the right data in place. And this goes back to my semi-frustration. I keep hearing that we need, another maturity program in this sort of area. Which I'm not, sorry, being critical. I'm being critical generally of the sector, not of environmental. But given we have got, moderate and high risks associated with planning around that data, it does make me worried how well we are aligned for where that planning hits now. So it is indeed the three waters, but you're telling me that's all tickety-boo, a terrible phrase. And I mean, you can see I'm saying, well, the next annual long-term plan, well, actually the annual plan, to be honest, but the annual long-term plan's coming around soon. We have to accommodate, I would hope, better planning in those rather than waiting for a 6 or a 7 year program to come to fruition.
Yes, yes. So and all of that, I mean, that's an incremental journey. So as you progress, you do get those benefits straight away. But, so yeah, just to make the distinction too between the asset data that describes the physical assets, which is in part driven by our accounting needs. So we can accurately reflect the values in our books, but to be able to describe capacity constraints or condition issues and the level of service issues in the future, legislative goalposts moving, that's the wisdom piece and the future generations, just, a reflection on the way councils do long-term plans when we're faced with either an affordability or deliverability constraint. We'll take 20% off a capital budget to address a present moment issue as if that was the only time that's ever happened in an LTP, not that we are the 6th council in a row to take 20% off a capital budget that was put up. And what does 18 years of 20% off leave for the future? So again, that the difference between able to describe what you have versus the journey that you've both been on and where you're going with your infrastructure.
Well, I love that. Music to my ears, Ian. So thank you for saying that. And it just reflects. I'm not trying to sound like a project manager, but I'd love to know ultimately when you have your maturity, what are the milestones that we can start banking as being development of that wisdom? Because your points are absolutely spot on, and I'd be keen to see how that goes. So that's great. Hey, thank you. That's really helpful. I'm encouraged by that, Glenn, and indeed, Parky, thank you for having Glenn here. It's great, as I say, to talk to the risk owner, if you will, or the project owner, which is superb. Members, are there any other questions about yes, Robin?
Just finding the page. Hi, Paku. Oh, no, I don't. Sorry, Glenn. I'm interested to see about this climate change risk assessment piece of work and the working group that you got there. And it's, I know that this is just the beginning of the reporting. And so I was just, you talk in there about identifying the climate change risks and then, you know, how we're accountable for managing them. But what are we going to do with that information about the risks? Is that going to filter through the rest of the organisation so that we can actively manage them, or?
Yes, that's correct. Yep, it's going to, yep, people, there'll be, we've allocated responsible risk owners in terms of each of the actions for across a broad range of risks. So absolutely.
Will we get visibility on that, or is that absolutely operational?
I think that's operational. However, I think that's going to be reported through to a different committee.
Okay.
It says that in your, it says to the sustainability and I can't read my writing.
Community resilience.
Yes, that's
our
correct.
committee. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Graham that is leading that piece of work.
Thank you, Graham.
But yeah, so that one.
Right. Good morning. Yeah, obviously the risk assessment as completed as far as we can complete it. Bear in mind the risk assessment we're doing at the moment is for council rather than district wide. That will be a different order of magnitude, I think. Certainly that can feed into our asset planning and our asset management, not just the in-ground infrastructure, but property and buildings and so on. So we can certainly take that into account. Ideally, then, I suppose we really need to try to bring that into the decision-making process as well. Now other councils are making that a standard part of reporting for decision-making. We're not there yet. We can include that in the draft climate change strategy if that's the way we want to go. So that it becomes standard part, so that as decision makers, you've got the full sight of what the impact would be on our climate change related risks. And then whether we report that annually as per climate standard 1 and what the Auditor General is expecting councils to disclose each year. And again, is something that's a conversation we need to have as to whether we do that voluntarily or not. But that would then give I suppose, a broader picture of how our risk management for climate change fits in.
Okay. Later on. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments I'd like to make? I was encouraged by the climate change. Oh, sorry, Paki, go for it.
Actually, I want to move us on to the LTP capital program.
Yep, go for it.
Because that's next on the ranks in line. So I've actually got Luke Archbold on the phone. So this particular bow tie risk assessment, we've focused on the work that the program manager is undertaking or initiated currently. Secondly, the second point about this is that he is going to be reporting later on in the piece, I think, around specific delivery. So I haven't focused that on this particular risk assessment. This is more around what we're putting in place additionally to ensure that we've got the resourcing and capability to support that delivery.
Right. Thank you. Any other comments on this? I was just reflecting on looking at some of the mitigations, both pre and post, and I was just looking perhaps for a stronger tie-in between the capital investment portfolio delivery and the financial strategy.
Luke, are you online? Would you like to respond to that? Or?
G'day, Luke. How are you?
Yeah, g'day. How are you doing? Could you please repeat the question for me?
Look, Luke, all I was reflecting, I don't have any trouble with the developing bow tie that we have in our papers reflecting this development around the LTP capital investment delivery. What I am keen to do is just look at, I was looking down the mitigations and I was thinking actually that I would be expecting to see some form of action that ties in our LTP capital investment portfolio with indeed our financial strategy as well. The two are related strongly. The financial strategy being the enabler of the capital investment portfolio. If you don't have the financial strategy on one side, you can't have the investment on the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
It may not be
I think-
it may not be a good question. It's probably more a statement, but I'm just interested to make that connection. Sorry. Oh, okay, Donna first, and then I think, and then Paku. Donna.
Yeah, so through the chair, that's a really good question, and I think it is a combined, probably me and Luke question, and we do have a little bit of work to do, and we are just I've been thinking about that with the fact that we have just signed off an LTP, and we do have a financial strategy, and what we're planning on doing is actually bringing probably back to this committee on a more regular basis an update on how we are tracking against our financial strategy and our actuals. And I know Luke will and the work that we're doing in capital delivery will inform a lot of that, and just to show overall whether we are heading in the direction that we have set in the financial strategy, or has something changed that means that we may be looking at a different direction or whatever. So we do need to do that piece of work, and that's something that we will be bringing back to the committee.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paku.
With more a comment, I'll make sure that that's included in.
Yeah. Okay, and we've got other indicators, particularly around Luke's capital investment program. For instance, when we get to the Treasury management report, for instance, we start to see where our debt line's at relative to where we want to be. But so there are other things here, but it just reflects that ultimately, as I say, the financial enabler needs to be in sync with the capital intentions of the LTP. So I hope that's clear, Luke. It's just me, the accountant, wanting to make certain I don't let you engineers run away. That's a joke. Okay. Any other comments or comments folk would like to make about Paku's risk report?
Can I just ask a question, perhaps while Luke's online? I'm always wary of new tools, new software implementations, etc. And it's a kind of where's your comfort levels that the new implementation of the new PPM tool is actually going to be tracking smoothly, it is going to hit the target date, that it is going to have the adoption that we need it to have, that it is going to make a difference, etc.
So I can probably say that as part of the upcoming agenda item, I've got a section to talk to exactly that, and can probably alleviate your concerns at that point in time.
Could we leave that till then, Peter? Good question, but I think if we leave that later paper, we'll deal with it. Okay, any other questions, comments? Paku, thank you for that. And again, thank you that you've arranged for the owners to be here as well. That made for an enriched discussion. Can we move to the recommendation, please, which is that we, sorry, I was just checking I hadn't missed a questioner out, that we received the report. I'll move that from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Robin. I appreciate that. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you.
Right, through the chair, the next report I've got up is the assurance report. We undertook a sensitive expenditure review. We always undertake sample testing across both staff and elected members. There are no significant findings here. Recommendations facilitate better visibility of the purpose of the spend and improved process. So that's what we're looking for. In undertaking our sensitive expenditure reviews each year, it's always a good reminder for the council to think prudently as we're accountable to the people we serve in regards to our spend. The annual audit plan, we're well into our integrity review, and we will be delivering a report or a summary of that report through by the end of the year. Also kicking off the income and revenue collection review, and we'll also have that delivered before the end of the year for reporting in early 2025. So by and large, the annual audit plan is tracking in the right direction. In terms of procedural development, you'll know I've been around the traipses in regards to CCTV and just trying to provide information out to community groups around the CCTV policy. And also I'll be leading a piece of work around the community owned assets. I know that's come up through this particular forum previously, so I'll be taking a lead on that and looking to understand what the problem is and trying to look at what the risks are associated with that paper way forward. So that's our assurance report. Any questions?
Thank you, Paki. Yes, Terry.
Yeah, Paki. I just, that one, which is on page 183 at the top there, the role of a lifeline utility coordinator. Can you just give us some insight into what that means?
I can't, but I'll need to ask, our emergency manager around that and feedback to you. Oh, well, here we go.
If I can answer that. So I thought I answered this a couple of councils ago, actually. So Lifelines is a grouping of emergency operators out of like the utilities, say the power and the phone, and our emergency managers as well. And it's how they get together and talk about what happens in a disaster.
Mhm.
What are the services that impact lives? And so there's a group of them that sort of prepare plans around emergencies to make sure that the sort of life supporting utilities are back up and running. And so
Do they sit over the top somehow? Is it?
well, they're kind of connected into civil defence. It's all very complicated how it all works. But anyway, so they're part of the civil defence network. They're a grouping within the civil defence network, and there'll be a coordinator that coordinates all of those utilities, such that, if you're out fixing the phone line, you fix the power line at the same time, kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's give me some
Thanks,
indication.
Any other questions or comments? Sorry, Paki, just a wee question for me, just aligning things. Your planned asset management review in 24-25, how does that fit in now with what we just discussed with Glenn before about the asset management work that he's doing?
Through the chair, we'd take that into account and review based on that. I think that would lead our understanding, that would lead our work in terms of what are the risks, where are the key areas we need to focus on in terms of that review.
Yeah, I'm keen that we align the two, make certain we aren't doing or duplicating or separate stuff or something. Okay, that's cool. Yes, Terry, go for it. Yes.
Yeah, just around the CCTV policy, there's a couple of community boards looking for cameras, etc. Will that be held off until this is put into place? How's the timing for the policy to be completed?
There's no reason why they can't continue on with their with what they're doing, their plan and program or whatever. This won't stop them from going ahead with that.
Right.
Yeah. So this policy just sets the expectations around CCTV on council land. So it's still far ahead. And I have provided guidance out to area managers in respect to what's needed in terms of the community groups.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Thanks, Terry. Any other questions, folk? There being none, can we move to the resolution, please, which we received Paku's assurance report? I'll move that from the chair. Oh, I've got Terry and Rika. Thank you very much. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. So we're going to the health and safety report, please, Paku.
In regards to the health and safety report, I do know that we are supposed to be reporting on or providing a separate report around personal confrontation. Now, I believed, now I believed that was for the next meeting or early 2025.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
so
thank you for explaining.
I just wanted to clarify that with you.
Thank you.
So we're continuing on our foundational health and safety improvements. So focus on that versus our nasty 9, which is what we would normally be reporting to you on. But we'll come back to the nasty 9 because those are still our significant hazards. Another focus area we've got at the moment is on our water plants. So health and safety practice in those plants, and that is on my watch list at the moment. And the other significant piece that's happening in this area is our IT system project, which is underway now. Good to know. And so this particular tool is significant for us in terms of driving all things health and safety, but mostly significantly contributing to the culture of health and safety, and that's around moving people to report and provide better reporting and all that sort of stuff. So that's what that system is about. Any questions?
Thank you. And again, thank you. I appreciate the 99 is always important. We should be worried about those, but I'm also appreciative that we got the higher level strategic approach that we're doing. It's helpful for us as governors. Questions? Yes, Peter.
It's more a comment really, but just an astonishing change in driver behaviour. So the work that you're doing there and is obviously having a quantum change. So well done.
Thanks for that.
Couldn't help but notice we've had a chair of a regional council resign because of enforcing speeding policy. So there we go. Keep going. Any other questions? Okay, here we go. Well, thank you for that, Paku. Again, very, very helpful. And I do appreciate having said it's good to see the system going, and I'm banking that. It's interesting to note the graphs and some of the things that we're confronting. So it will be good to get that next report at what is the appropriate time. And I'm sorry if there was any sense of pressure around that. I thought this was it, but we'll get that going forward, and it would be very helpful when in due course it comes.
Excuse me, with the nasty 9, we're going to be sidelined for a discussion later, is that right?
Not today, but is there a question you want to raise? I'm open to it now if you want to, Terry.
Just really around, we've just sent 5,000 letters out to people around stormwater in Whangataa, and I'm just flagging the issue that there will be some discussion and just hoping that there's no issues in terms of confrontation, but there most probably be some fairly strong discussion. So just flagging it really. So it could be up there. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, can we move to the recommendation, which is we received the report? I'll move in a second, please. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Dali. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Right, debtors update. Thank you, Paku. Appreciate that. Hayden, wherever you are, sir. Debtors report. As always, if you could give us the highlights, please, Hayden, that would be great. Thank you.
Yep. Through the chair, I'll take the report as read. I guess the key points to note in this report is that we've set the rates in July. So obviously our outstanding debt goes up. Per last meeting, there's a request to try and standardise some of the reasoning around why our arrears has increased last year. We're working on that. I guess it's about sort of capturing it in the system so that we can kind of report on it and sort of standardise the reasoning into different categories, so it's easy to sort of report on. Generally, talking with the rates team, and that is that the general comment is that times are tough is the reason for the arrears, but I guess we just need to standardise that reasoning and get a bit of data, and so that's what we're sort of working on. We have seen an increase in arrangements to pay, so we've seen that sort of jump up in the last few months. So that's I guess another sign that that times are tough, and we have had to send 154 accounts to mortgagee. So that's where we send it off to the bank. So if there's a mortgage registered against the title, then we can send it off to the bank, and the bank has to pay us. I think there's a set date, and I think it's in December. So within 2 months or 3 months, they have to actually pay us. Or if the customer doesn't, the ratepayer doesn't. Sorry. And the other thing we've done recently is we've centralised the collection of sundry debtors. So previously it was kind of split out into teams, whereas we've kind of brought it within the credit controller's space, and she will work with the team. So we're hoping to get we're already seeing some good results there, but we're hoping to get some real traction in that space.
Thank you, Hayden. That's really interesting. So, folk, how do we got questions here for Hayden? Yeah, John.
Yeah, just one, Hayden, that's quite a large step, going to the banks, and with our 154 properties we're doing that with, how much of an increase, if any, is that over the last 12 months or so? Has it come up quite dramatically, or?
I'll pass that, Judy, if that's okay.
The last time that we went to the mortgagee, there was only sort of 43 people that we went to. There was a little bit of a delay on some with a change of credit controller position. So some hadn't gone for the previous year, which is why I think it's jumped so high, is because we've got people from the previous year debt as well as the 23-24 year.
Right, I really appreciate that, but that is truly a sign. I mean, that's more than the bad debt now. That's reached quite a serious stage for 154 property owners. Sign of the times.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just make one more comment? Sorry to interrupt. Just in relation to that, where the banks do go out to these customers and advise them that we have notified them, we have had about 60 people come back to us and make arrangement to pay because they want to clear it all. Some of them have actually paid all together, like cleared the debt in total because they didn't realise that the debt was still outstanding. They weren't responding back to any correspondence. So there has been a significant change in the amount that will get demanded in December if they haven't been paid.
So you're telling me that 154 has dropped by 60, Judy? Is that
roughly 60? Yeah. So we're probably in the 80s of people that still owe money for the ones that we've sent through to mortgagee.
Yes, mate.
Can I just check that this is not where the houses are going to be sold? This is adding the debt to an existing mortgage.
Yeah, the bank works with the mortgagee, their customer, to repay that outstanding amount to us. So the bank has, I guess, different levers to pull.
Yep. Thank you.
Judy,
That is still an option, but it's a pretty serious one after this, but you're obviously not activating that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No. Thank you, Hayden. Sorry, Glenn.
So just to clarify, Hayden, the only time that council would sell a property is if there is no mortgage, so that they're going to the bank is not an option. So it's essentially a refusal to pay or a owner gone missing situation. Have I got that right?
In 99.9% of cases, but there is the odd private mortgage that can be put against property. And we have seen, me and Judy have seen that in a couple instances where, they don't actually repay. So that's outside of a typical bank arrangement. So, but yes, typically, but there's a whole lot of steps before we get to rating sale.
So it's pretty rare, isn't it?
And I haven't seen us take anyone for a rating sale. We are working through a couple properties currently, but hopefully it doesn't get near there. Yeah.
Thanks, Hayden.
Yeah, Terry?
Reverse mortgages, is this part of what you're talking about as well?
No, reverse mortgage is a bit different.
Can they load rates against that?
In theory, they can. I guess they could. So a reverse mortgage is where they, the customer would take out a mortgage with their bank and then
get the
once
money and
they
then
own
sell the
the
house
property,
and then
they-
pay it back then. Yeah,
I suppose they could.
it could
apply
work in
for
that same way.
rates. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you normally would, but bearing in mind that you'd arrange a reverse mortgage generally through a third party. So it's really what are the conditions between the third party and the homeowner. But I mean, that's part of the so-called attraction of the reverse mortgages. You can do it for rates. Any other questions or comments people like to make? Look, Hayden, I think we are interested to see what it is. I mean, the reasons for the increase, and the little green bar under 2024 on page 191 is obviously a little, we've got a green rather than red, but it's obviously going up. Is it a trend? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. And I'm conscious that you'll get some standardised data, I think is what you're saying, to try and give a more nuanced generalisation than just times are tough. I must confess I was interested in actually also why then were we so high in prior years. My memory has faded a decade ago as to why in 2015 we might have been at 13.4%. It could be our own performance, it could be conditions, I don't know, but it might be worth just thinking, can we recall what were the conditions that gave rise to such a high rate? Because it's still, we're still well below it, but we don't want to get back up to that level. I can almost guarantee that. Okay, thank you for that. So on that basis, I'm happy to move that we receive Hayden's report. Over, seconder, please. Thank you, Len. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. So Hayden, Treasury Report, please. Again, happy to take it as read, but be keen for your comments, please.
Through the chair, we've currently got $91 million of external debt outstanding, of which 10 million has been borrowed for pre-funding repayment of debt in April 25, and we're compliant against all key Treasury policy metrics.
Thank you. Any questions for Hayden? Yeah, Terry, go for it.
So it doesn't show the trend when the water's done well moves.
No, we removed that graph, but we can definitely put it back in if you want.
It's likely to come back in, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, if the debt transfers, then yeah, yes.
So we'll drop that line down to roughly what, sort of 60% less than. So
Yeah, off the top of my head, it'd be something about.
I think we should be aware of that as we go through that, how that's going to impact us and what's going. I would like to see that in there if it could be.
Right, sure. Len?
Aren't we a bit early to be throwing that line in there, because we just don't know where we're going to land in terms of what our water's done well arrangements are going to be, whether it's we're going to have, as a council, we're going to have a number of options put in front of us. Until we know what those options are, it feels like it's too early to be throwing financial graphs in there until we've got that information.
Yeah.
We did, but that was based on a previous government policy, which was really clear. That's gone, and we're still working through where we're going to land in terms of that, the water management plan, and what our financial arrangements are going to be and what our lending is going to be. So I'm interested to maybe Aileen or Donna.
Yeah, I just quickly
comment on that.
Before Aileen, if we move, we're going to take the three waters, my understanding, the three wastewater, stormwater and potable water.
Well, these are things we're still working through, and we haven't made those decisions
I
yet.
thought there was three waters going to go.
Can I comment that when the legislation was repealed, we took the line out, and when the legislation is rebuilt, we'll put it back in again.
So it feels a bit early, Terry. I know what you're saying, but I don't think we're there yet.
Hayden, I'm interested, given the very good discussion we had with Parku and Glenn before, that if we look at the first page 195, we always know that we're running to the 80%. And I think this plays back into the point that Hayden's making. We're always, ultimately planning to be 20% behind on where we want to be. And we have successive years of being at 80%, not 100. So this is where the financial strategy ties back in well with what our capital delivery is amongst things. I appreciate it's more than just capital delivery that determine things, but actually I find that interesting. But just a minor point, we are technically in breach of our interest rate cover, aren't we, at about 2029, according to the graph here.
Yeah.
So we're comfortable. We're holding off on that. For what reason?
Currently, we were looking to execute a few swaps to bring that into line, but we were holding off for it to go under 4%.
Yeah.
That the interest rate swap, and it just hasn't quite got there. It's about 4.01, but
yeah.
Yeah, as soon as it drops below, because we just feel that 3% range is it's a good range to lock in.
I just want to be picky because actually we're not compliant. You see, we are in all counts, and we are not compliant by that graph in terms of interest rate cover. If you look at it at year 29, there's a little. I know it might seem small to everybody, but we are under the minima, aren't we? According to that. Otherwise, it would all be shaded under the black line. If I misread the diagram. Page 197. Yes, 197 and 196. The policy minima is that we would have those black lines are the bands between which we should have, depending on conditions, and we should have a level of fixed interest rate positions rather than merely floating. And about 29, there is a small gap there. You've indicated to me why, because you're waiting for a situation. So I don't want to make a meal of this. All I'm trying to reflect is we are technically not compliant in the outer years, but I understand the reason why, which is that actually it is a reasonable way out. So we are technically outside our policy, but the conditions I think are generally accepted across the sector. Indeed, your point that with probable changes in the OCR, there's a better position that we can fix on to correct this at a later point in time. Okay, good.
How long did you feel between getting to below the 4? How long was it? Were you anticipating a period?
I think we were just waiting on
to drop.
Just to drop here, and there's been some news that has helped it sort of come down, but PwC were just feeling that we just hold a little bit longer.
There are two main. It's a bit like I because I know them both. I accuse them of being like the supermarkets. There are two main treasury houses in the country. One is the one we use, and the other is another one, and they're both doing the same strategy. Can I say that, Terry? So we're not out of the woods. But I just want to which is that it is been advised that the conditions in the way that you are will improve. So I mean, I bring that as hopefully a sense of assurance. But I just want to be technically correct that we are out of the policy here at the moment, but we're obviously looking to correct it. Nobody's quite said when it will be corrected, Terry, because of course, as you said, you're looking for a number, which is to go below 4 to get into the 3s, which makes sense. And at the same time, I looked across the right there, and where it got a weighted average fixed rate of 3.62%. So that's a lot better than many councils. A lot better. Okay, thank you for that. That's a very helpful report and connections back to assets, and also I'd like to point, Terry, that somebody on the track when this is going to be affected by what is done well, but I appreciate you've got a bit of optioneering to do before you get to there. I'll move from the chair that we receive the report. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Dolly. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you. Thank you for that, Hayden. Appreciate your presence. I think Luke I've got online. I think I saw Ian sitting down the back there. I wonder, Ian, if you'd like to come to the table.
Section.
Oh, Luke. That's impressive. You teleported. Sorry. Oh, you must have just disappeared. I looked, you were there, and now you're here. It's impressive. Yeah, that's right. It dazzled me with science already. Well, guys, I'll let you lead us through and take it as you see fit, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. This is my first attendance today as the Program Manager for Capital Delivery. I'd like to talk briefly to some of the elements in the report, noting that this is a requirement in regards to CE KPIs. In the interesting situation of being a KPI, reporting on my fellow KPIs today, and assisting me is Ian Morton, who should be a familiar face to you. So the first item in the report is the project management tool. I can provide a little bit more up-to-date information since the report was written. We have a signed contract and the project has started for implementation of Monday.com through one of the 4 implementation partners in New Zealand, KPMG. Monday.com, to answer your query of earlier, is a very user-friendly interfaced option. We looked for that specifically. And one of the strengths of the submission through KPMG was the fact that they focus strongly on change management, which means how do we embed that best into the organisation and drive that strong adoption. And so we've got a lot of confidence that we've got the right partner to bring this into the system, and we've got the right system being really friendly up front, but also having some really powerful functionality in the background.
But just on that, thank you for that.
Yep.
Yes, I've struck Monday.com before, and I sort of thought, it's really odd, but anyway, let's not worry about the name. You say it interfaces well. What does it interface well with?
So graphical user interface, as in how easy is it in the front end for people to look at and understand how to use. So it's actually quite intuitive. It's highly configurable as well, which means that we can configure it to meet the business systems we're running rather than us having to adjust our systems to this IT tool that we're using. So that means we can match it off really nicely to how we work.
So it interfaces both with your physical delivery or your asset management work, but it also interfaces with the financial ledger.
So it has the ability to integrate with the financial tool that we're using, and that was one of the measures through the tender process that we said it was a must-have.
Great.
Yeah.
Delly?
Just having a look at Monday.com online, and I've used platforms like this before. Will this help to address some of the silos as well? Because you're going to have like a project overview that, say, planning, Three Waters, whatever, can all look at and understand that they have some input to have into that project.
Yeah, that leads on nicely to the next part, which is the most recent review of our now portfolio program and project management framework. So what it is, because it's highly configurable, we can configure it to that framework, which means we can set it up in a way where we can have a portfolio view and sub-portfolio views, your sub-portfolios being like waters and roading and the like, and you can have dashboard reporting so that you can see what's going on with the health of those portfolios as well as the specifics of individual projects. Yeah.
Going well, thank you.
Cool. Any further questions on the tool itself? No?
Yes, Terry.
Thanks. Sounds like a great piece of technology to use. When we lose 60% of our business, will the tool still be a valuable piece of our equipment and council?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, look, I actually wonder. I mean, it's not it doesn't have to be a big drama, but sometimes seen as I'm going to say seen as believing. Sometimes seen as helpful. I wonder when you've got it running, it might be useful if you could, put up on the screen and we'd have it just to see the flashy dashboard. Would be useful just to give us a sense of actually the integration. So the silo question of Delhi, the integration of the financial and the asset information. When would that be, by the way? I mean, are we talking a year out or next month, or what is it?
So we've got our design phase kicking off first week in November.
Yeah.
The design and implementation is taking till the end of this calendar year.
Yep.
In the new year, we're going to do the rollout to staff. So the training, the focus. We didn't want to do it pre-Christmas because people forget about life and the work sense and go and enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
So in the new year, we'll roll that training out. We want to get people using it because data in gives you the insights and you'll be able to see those dashboards. So we'd want to roll through at least 1 month, maybe 2 of reporting in through the system to give you the dashboards to see.
Brilliant, mate. Look, I'm not boosting my board to say get it here, but perhaps if you can settle the middle of next year,
and happy to do
it would be very helpful, probably for the committee, just to get a sense, because it is a critical tool clearly for the organisation. Thank you, Lee.
Absolutely. No worries.
You go, mate.
Okay, so the next section, just talking to the project management methodology. So that has tied in nicely with the tool. It is about making sure that we have that consistent approach to delivering our projects, our programs, and unlock the portfolio visibility for senior management to manage at that high level what the health of the portfolio and the ability to dip in when required because of that increased visibility. So I'll take any questions that anybody may have on that.
Peter?
I guess one of the key questions is this going to enable us to deliver more of our capital program on a annual basis?
So it will enable us to do it in a consistent way to ensure that we've got the best chance to deliver good outcomes. There's other things that we're relying on to be able to deliver more. One of those things being resourcing. So we need to have the appropriate resources in place to support project managers to deliver successfully, as well as some additional project management resources.
Any other points? Thank you, Luke. Keep going.
Oh,
Is that it?
I'll pass on to
Oh,
Ian.
okay. Ian, go for it.
So I'll just talk to the next section. So that's around the kind of councillor and community initiatives. So since we've approved an LTP, and if you remember through that LTP process, we went through prioritisation and we tabled that with councillors many times to confirm the projects that we would actually commit to and deliver within the long-term plan process. And look, I will say through that process, and because of obviously rates increases and our kind of want to reduce the rates impact for the communities, there was a lot of projects below the line. And we talked about this quite a lot around those kind of above the line and below the line projects. Since the LTP has been adopted, projects have been identified again that are already on that list, mainly, and that's contained within attachment A. And it kind of felt that actually it'd be good to just maybe talk about a potential process for saying, as we get new, and we're not calling them projects, we're calling them initiatives because they're not projects until they're approved. How do we deal with these initiatives and consider them through the process of the year? Did you want me to stop, Rika? Oh, sorry. So look, what we've suggested here is 2 steps to this. One is round about this time of the year, so around about October, to reflect on those projects that are in there. And the reason for that timing round about October is by that point in time, all the contracts aren't in place with the vendors, because if we do it much later in the year, there'll be a lot less ability for you to move things up and move things down. So the suggestion is there's maybe a workshop point at that point in time. Hi, is there any other projects that you want to bring up? Any that you want to move down? We've got some ability. Let's do it now. Initiatives. Sorry.
I think we've got a couple of questions that's going. I've got Rika and then Dali. Well, then Terry.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And this is a great conversation to have. I just had a comment around your attachment A, and as I look at it, and this is some of the feedback we gave during the LTP process, I feel a little confused because there really lacks a little bit of detail around where you're talking about. Trails on the hills. Okay, so it talks about Thames, but some of them, cycleways, 4 projects. Fire station playground, no idea where that is. So this is sort of feedback that we gave before in terms of when we talk about projects and we read through these sorts of things. It'd be really good to have just that little bit more detail, even the ward that it sits in, so you sort of go, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is. And my other point is, doing this process is really well and good, but we have an LTP, and I know this is sort of addressing those initiatives that pop up. We have an LTP, we've consulted on an LTP, we've talked about a plan, and I just feel a little bit nervous that we then go back and go, well, we've gone out, we've talked about this, we've approved this plan, but we're going to change these things over here. Now, I understand we need to be a little bit flexible, but it just concerns me a little bit.
So
Look, and I think that they're really good points. This list came from a discussion with councillors, Aileen, is that correct? Attachment A. So obviously we just took it based on what was available at that point in time. So that's why there's not a lot of detail, because it was just from a whiteboard. Obviously, within the prioritisation, when we're referring to projects, there is more detail around some of these projects, because there is project request forms that support the scope, and we've got ward information in there. So certainly, next time round, we can add that. As far as the, you've just agreed an LTP, that was quite a thorough process, but these projects keep getting raised and they keep taking staff time to discuss and assess, not only from councillors, but from communities to go, well, what about this? And I think what we wanted to try and do is provide some sort of process to go, well, you can always consider new projects and new initiatives. You can always consider that, but we just wanted to put some sort of framework round about it to say there's probably two key points of the time. One is early on in the financial year, and you either decide to move things around, and you can always make that call, or you do an out of cycle investment into that. And again, this is your call. Or you do it round about April, May, and you feed it into the next annual plan. And generally for staff, it's always best having the April, May discussion, because if you look at the report, we've got a significant amount of carry forward. If you look at what the team have to deliver this financial year, it's a 36% increase year on year from last year. They've got a full dance card. They've got a lot on. You can always add things in. And we just wanted to provide some mechanism so that when initiatives get popped up, that they just don't kind of roll about, that, that there's a good process for us to consider them. And that's what this is there to do.
I also add to that, just briefly, the other important part of these initiatives is to ensure that they're actually investment ready, so that the project team can pick them up and start delivering, rather than having to circle back and do a lot of pre-project work to get them in shape. Another factor that puts pressure on a team to deliver in the time frame required.
And I'll talk more about that when we come to baselines as well, actually. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Delly.
So, nice little segue into community-led initiatives and calling them initiatives, because I know it does, I look at the work that Mitch and Ellie Davey and people like that put into the Hikawai Trail Initiative, where we ended up being controlling authority but not owning the assets. I know, and everyone knows, my pet project is Bluff Track out at Koatuni Matarangi. Is there staff capacity to guide, because obviously Mitch and Ellie spend a lot of time on that one, those initiatives where the community is saying we want to do the groundwork, and as Martin pointed out, we have deep pockets and we can fund some of that work ourselves. Is there a mechanism or a staff capacity to deal with that sort of project?
I'd probably reference back to Glenn's point earlier in the session where he talked about planning resource. It's consistent within this context as well. We need the planning resource to fund the pre-project work to ensure that they're investment ready. Not at this point in time.
Thank you, Delly. Terry, Martin, John.
Yeah, thank you. So when Ian came to the council some while ago, I thought it was fantastic, this weighting system to find projects to make sure they went into the system. But what I've found out since, really, they're already, as far as we're concerned, they're focused on the capital district funded projects. They work really well, battery reactors and screw presses and all that, which we don't have a lot of input in. It's staff bringing that information to the table. So the weighting around the prioritisations and the statutory requirements and that, we understand. But when we came to the community and they'd done their work and said, these are our important things, when we looked at the weightings, we felt that they didn't manage those in a way that they could see their projects rise up that list and pass the line. And I just think that it needs to have a two-part look at this. There's district funded parts, the big numbers, staff input and big things, and then you've got community section, which they do the work on there. They prioritise their projects and bring it to council, and they want to see them rise through the list to some degree and have a different weighting system. So I praise the idea, fantastic for district, but I've struggled with the local projects and the people who've done the work there to see their projects not at the table, and I'd like to see that maybe have a look at and see where it fits, because yeah, we're pretty keen. And that list that Rika talked about there's some things in there we're saying, well, maybe you need to look at that as well. So we'll make some comment on that.
And thanks for that. Certainly Luke gave me a heads up because there was a community meeting recently that basically the community felt that their projects weren't included within the delivery for the LTP. And I fully understand that. And the rationale for that is because you're focused primarily on renewals. You know, I mean, that you've limited a lot of projects right back. Now, there is a decision that you can make, so you can relook at the weighting on the MCD criteria. And look, we went through that quite fast because there was a lot going on and it was the first time. So, you know, I would recommend leading into your annual plan discussion, having a real look at the criteria and the weighting. Is it correct? There is other options where you could move that line up slightly and then actually create some capacity for the teams for some very community specific led projects that maybe aren't above the line. So I think there's mechanisms to do it.
Yeah.
And I would recommend kind of doing that, feeding into the next annual plan to have that discussion, but really kind of understand the weighting, really understanding around those, because we did feed in the top 10 projects from the communities. That was part of the process and they got a weighting, but I will say it was a lower weighting than statutory requirements around health and safety or legal requirements. And that's why they didn't get to the top.
Yeah, well, a lot of the local projects wouldn't fit into that criteria at any rate. So, so we were really looking at the prioritisation side of the weightings.
Yeah.
Obviously, the deliverable things is a bit more on council's thing, but prioritisation was we felt that the community project should really have a higher rating and they're locally funded, so the money should be part of a rating system. You're getting into things like key capital projects that didn't fit in that criteria, we felt. So we need to look at those.
Yeah, and there is a significant amount that is locally funded. You know, all the renewals are locally funded for all the community facilities. That's all locally funded. So there is a lot happening, but it's renewals. It's
land appreciation, most of them, aren't they?
So, sorry, renewals is very unsexy, isn't it? That's
it is pretty unsexy.
Well, I think it's the word that's used.
Yeah.
Martin.
Okay.
Yes, so there was something I wanted to talk about here on the third project down on attachment A, where it's saying below the line project, no. But then the comment along, so it's a solar 30K, which I don't know what that was. It says not on the prioritization list. So this was a project that was above the line.
No, it wasn't identified. So it came up in conversations through some of our very early discussions. When we had David Cunliffe running some sessions, solar came up as one of the ideas that councillors thought we might want to actually look into a little bit more around and do some funding around. But it never then made its way onto a prioritisation list. So it was kind of discussed, but then that was all. And because it never ended up in a prioritisation list, it was never really kind of fleshed out in any other detail.
Okay.
Thank you. John Morrissey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, staff for the report, and I absolutely admire your intentions for bringing back attachment A. However, having just gone through the LTP and that process and the discussion that happened around this table to get to where we arrived with our projects, that was massive. And I think it was a fair process. I take on board what Terry said, and he's a great community leader in his town. He fights for his community in those projects. However, you don't put drugs in front of an addict and you don't put lollies in front of councillors. Okay? We've been through this, so we're at our max. I don't want to go back down that track, is what I'm saying. We struggle, and it came up with the chair before, $30 million in depreciation is what we account for And when we're spending $12 million, we're not even meeting our depreciation expenditure, I believe, to the level that we should be. And I know that's only a snapshot, as the chair outlined to me when I had a conversation with him, of a period in time. But I'd like to know if that's a continuing trend for 3 years, then we're in deep trouble. So while these projects are nice to have brought back to us, we just simply haven't got the capacity, I believe, to deal with them. And I like the other councillors just to reflect on that as well. There should be nothing brought in that we've already looked at unless something comes out. And a lot of our work is basically on the big item projects, the stuff that the community actually has to have through legislation or whatever, not the nice to haves. And I think that final decision sits fair and square at this council table. We went through a good process to get to where we got. So I do appreciate your efforts. This is no criticism. This is just a general talk to councillors. Just beware.
Thank you. Peter.
I was just perhaps going to say, I'm wondering if we're getting a bit diverted, missing the overall point of this thing, which is to get a good understanding of the framework and what's being done to improve and develop around our project management and our program capability, rather than actually looking at specific projects and so on. So I'm just.
Peter, I take your advice. Actually, I'd let the conversation, I'm going to say wander, I don't mean that quite, but to go, because actually that's what I've understood is you're raising process here. But I've also heard important we're not a policy committee, I know this, but important discussions around what is the LTP? Do we have scope for change or don't we change? It's what you've been talking about. What would be the conditions that would give rise to it? So I think I would like to thank you, Peter, in the conversation on this aspect here now, on the basis that actually you've got some good feedback now. And I think it is good. We've heard some different views. So it's obviously an area from a process perspective, because I'm not going to get into the individual projects, but from a process perspective, I think I'm hearing a bit more work needs to be done, which is not a criticism of what you're doing, because in fact you're raising it, but there is some differing views around the committee. So I think I do want to close this down. Not close it down. I want to move on.
I understand that, but what I would like to do is add a bit more context to this, and if I can refer councillors to page 184, where in the assurance report, which addresses directly the topic that's been brought up, and I think it is important. On 184, under the summary of policy guidance and procedural improvement work underway, you'll look at community-owned assets, and staff have clearly identified the process that they're going to be looking at for the subject to community assets and potential requests, which goes directly to on page 205, the projects that, with respect to Councillor Morrissey, it's not okay just to say no, a blanket no to every community group that brings these projects to us. They want a discussion. We have an obligation to have that discussion because they don't go away. And the Mercury Bay councillors know this. We talked last week about Tairua. And the trail, the walking trail in Tairua, we had that discussion. That is one of many, and there will be a number of other topics that communities want to have the discussion about, including Bluff Road, including assets that they want to hand over to council. These things happen on a daily basis. So on page 184, staff are looking at a process for addressing how do we deal with these. And that'll feed into how we address these in terms of annual plan and LTP. We have to have the discussion, guys. They don't go away. So I'm sorry, we have an obligation to continue looking at how we deal with these. Otherwise, we're not doing our jobs.
And sorry. So just the process that we've got, we've kind of said, look, we've got a good process that we went through the LTP. Okay, there can be tweaks. You can look at the weighting. There's times of the year to feed that in, but really we've got a process for capturing initiatives. We then assess them and you make then calls around that. And I suppose just as staff, we just want to try and limit the noise through the year. It will happen, but as long as we've got a good process to then capture and say, it's in there, let's reassess the weighting, or let's reassess the scoring if that's important, or actually it's a new project and, you know, we need to then just add that into the list. So I think what we're saying is we've got quite a clear process, but we need to kind of probably only look at key times of the year where we've got some flexibility to be able to do that. Outside of that, it's then up to councillors to decide as out of cycle really discussions.
Thank you. John, did you have a final point?
Just one. Thank you very much for your indulgence. Hey, listen, I may have got this totally wrong, but I hope staff are not coming under pressure from councillors regarding projects, because if there's stuff that councillors want to have discussed, it should be done at this table through the CEO and not put pressure on staff members. So I hope that is the case and that you're not getting pressure directly.
Correct.
Correct.
So I think the key thing is coming back in with just perhaps us the finalised process. So I hear two things. I hear your point that really in reality for a local authority there are two set times where you are best to have this discussion. So I think that's a strong indication to councillors that actually in dealing with this issue, we need to be cognizant of those two key points. There is a higher level question, which I also heard in the discussion, which is actually what is an LTP and decisions made that have been done through consultation. Yep. So the question to me is what I'm hearing some differences is actually how do you join the two? You know, what would give rise? I'm not asking for that answer now because I can think of the answers too, but I think just for clarity, that would be a useful part to complete what you're saying is the primary process for considering amendments, and we aren't talking big numbers here. The primary basis for it, because actually also I heard your point, Luke, it sheets then into if we're getting indications, do we get these into project ready mode and all that sort of drama. So I think just if we join where we're at with the LTP, why do we have when can we and why can we have the conversation about additional projects, and then actually when's the time to get them in? That would be great.
Okay. Good
clarity. Okay, keep going. I think there's still a couple of sections to go. The baseline is and what have you. RAG report seems probably.
So I'll just carry on with baselines. So look, this is the first time we've really done this within TCDC, which is independently review each of the key projects and actually make sure that we've got really clear baselines at the beginning of the year. And the whole purpose of doing that is making sure that we've got clear scopes, clear schedules, we've got budget to deliver what we have to deliver, and also that we clearly understand the delivery risk for these projects. So again, this was the first time that we've really kind of done this process to the rigor that we've done it. Obviously, we've got a lot of information that was contained within the project request forms that supported the LTP discussions. Just wanted to highlight just some key points around some key departments. So just for transport, there's been quite a lot of change as a result of the NZTA funding discussion. So that's not only this council, but obviously any council within New Zealand where a lot of that funding has changed. So that's impacted the baseline asset within the LTP. Some projects as well that we identified as 100% Crown funded, that funding hasn't landed. So again, just wanted to flag that that is something that is a change to the original baseline as set within the LTP. Within parks and reserves, we've not fully baselined that. And the reason for that is we're looking at more of a portfolio approach led by Luke and the team. And that's kind of rather than individual projects, you know, area by area going, is there synergies where we can actually deliver more efficiency by grouping these contracts up across the district and looking at that. So there's some further work that's happening until December. Through this baselining, there is some projects that won't be able to deliver the full amount in this financial year. And I think understanding that early on is really useful rather than you getting a surprise in May, June next year. So again, and we've called that out within the baseline documents. And then there's some key projects. Thames Aquatic Centre isn't fully baselined yet because we're working through business cases until December. Whitianga Wharf, they're doing community consultations until December. And then the Totara Valley programme, again, you know, once we get further clarity about the demand and the development, again, that will be baselined in December. So there's some key projects I just wanted to flag as a result of this process. And again, this is good process to let you know early on around this. And I think we'll just refine this as we get further through the years, is getting these baselines done early, highlighting them. And then if there is calls to move some things out, well, what do you bring in? Because it does allow for some capacity. So it allows for the right conversations.
Thank you for that. That's really very interesting. And can I congratulate you on good work, by the way, too? Yeah, it's superb. Like, we're seeing process here. Our risk focus is actually understanding the overall, I'm about to say the sanctity, but the keeping of the capital program. And delivery, I presume, is another part of the council that actually deals with this on a sort of a deep dive project by project basis. So I'm interested in that broader system. Are you A, comfortable with the process? B, you're seeing the results? And it may be at that higher strategic level, you've got some questions. And I like what you've just said, Ian. This is to indicate where there might be difficulties. Difficulties are wrong word. There may be challenges to delivery, which again is really helpful from the discussion we had, not just the assurance one, but also with Hayden over the Treasury management, where I'm keen to tie in, and Don has said this, the financial strategy with indeed where it's at. So, folk, questions for Ian and Luke on yes, Peter.
Yeah, just a quick one. Overall, you're identifying, I don't know, about 125 different projects. That feels like a lot. Is it a lot or not?
That's what you've committed to within the long-term plan. I mean, is it a lot in comparison to what other councils do? It's very similar. It's not abnormal. I mean, I will say there's a lot of BAU type projects contained within that are individual line items. So when you start taking them off and you start focusing on your major projects, there's a much smaller list of projects, but it's not abnormal. But it is a lot on the team, and it is a lot on local government for to deliver, and that's quite normal.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, Terry.
Yeah, I'm really keen to understand the district funded projects, the dollars valued in the LTP versus the local projects. Have you got an indication of this, the amount spent in one area on district versus local?
I can probably give you that offline, but I've got that right here in front of me about, per department for all the community facilities projects, which are locally funded. For the roading projects, the split between locally funded. So maybe I would just catch up offline if that's okay.
We need it. Thank you. Appreciate that. It'd be good if you could do it that way. Any other questions for? No, just look, having said that, I want to keep it high. Process wise, what does the red flag projects mean? I've got to look in here at page. Where are we?
I'll hand over to
217. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're calling the category red flag. I mean, obviously, I realise what red flag is a new explanation of baselining, but in a sort of what's the messaging that we should take from this one?
Yeah, so I guess reg status reporting reds are ones which we're indicating will need intervention to ensure that we can deliver them successfully. The 5 that you see in the reg status report, 4 of them are the Totra Valley Road project, broken to the different types of work required. There is already work underway for that, which is being brought to council in December for a decision. And so it's read until we get that decision in regards to, is this a feasible project going forward? Will it get the outcomes council are seeking? And that information will be brought to council in December.
Thank you. I thought. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Martin.
Just one question with the attachment A, B, and C, and I hope I'm not coming across as some sort of pedantic person, but there's 3 different formats of how we've got the budget. The one where it's saying dollar and the number K, then the next one is saying 1,000, 452,000, and then the third one actually has cents at the end. So it just potentially a little bit confusing when you're looking at the 3 different formats of the money. And I appreciate they probably come from different systems, but my initial confusion, I had to keep adjusting my brain to everyone's looking blank. It's just me.
So I guess at this point, it's a really manual system.
Yeah.
So you've actually got different people pulling these together, or multiple people pulling these together. And so you're getting a bit of variation based on that
Yeah.
factor. What I would say is the reg status report is pretty high level. It's based off of largely spreadsheets
Yeah.
and manual labour to pull you some visibility.
Yeah.
And so I'm holding my breath, but really looking forward to Monday.com delivering you a consistently formatted and shaped view of the portfolio for capital investment.
And I don't want you spending any additional cents changing this.
And just on
Or
the,
cents, or in fact dollars, or.
just on attachment A, that was just what came out of the whiteboard session that councillors had. So we didn't have any more detail broken down apart from 10K, 20K, 50K from your whiteboard session that you had with Aileen.
Brilliant. Thank you for that.
If I could
Yes,
just
Aileen,
make
go.
one comment that what we hope to see is a whole bunch of efficiency out of this, because I did joke to the community boards that they're not allowed to break Luke because he's actually reporting to 5 community boards and to this committee and also through to the leadership team. So it's really important that we can rationalise the reporting. If we can standardise it, that would be great. So that we can just free up all of that time to actually do the projects and sort of minimise the reporting burden, making sure we've got our dollars and cents format correct.
Yeah, Lee. This is really exciting, guys. Seriously, you're gripping up massively on an area that I sense from here, but I know elsewhere around the sector is an area not well gripped up in some councils. So it's tremendous. I mean, I might say we're just keeping up with the play, with the fact that we are, and you guys are the visible presence. That's great. So thank you for that. And it's been a very interesting insight into the whole process. I wonder if we could move to the resolution, please, if that's okay. But thank you, Dally. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Terry. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Thank you very much for that, you guys, again. Appreciate it. Rightio, Donna, elected members' expenses, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read that this report is being brought to you basically because of the elected members' expenses and resources policy, which council signed off on, I think it was at the September meeting. And as you can see from the report, I've done a little bit of a summary. There's been a lot of meetings for this first quarter. 17 elected member meetings, 11 workshops, and you've all been busy attending some really important conferences and trainings. So the table that is in Appendix A there is a very, very high level summary of expenses that has been generated from the elected member meetings, etc., over the first quarter. So happy to take any questions from anybody on this topic.
Thank you, Donna. And it is Dally.
Yeah, interesting exercise. I think in the scheme of things, I want to speak very strongly on this in terms of the fact that we work for the minimum wage. And I am not prepared to carpool via Coromandel Town or contribute to my lunch, because the professional work that we're expected to do in our roles is not well remunerated. And the sums involved in this and the very critical professional development, and I've talked about this before, that we shouldn't be not fighting, but saying, oh, well, you went to this conference last time, so you can't go this time, because the only professional development we get is by in-house consultants being brought in, such as Sue Wells and Elizabeth Hughes that I talked to the other day. I know that it's very important to have this visibility in public, but I think it's rats and mice in the scheme of things. We've got other budget items or things that we could do better that would have greater savings for the ratepayers. So that's, my very strong opinion on this.
Thank you, Dally. John M.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, that's a great report to have available now in the order paper, and I think the public will have an interest in it. There's no two ways about that. Just to make sure their money's being spent wisely. I took the time to formulate an email and send out to every councillor and the mayor and the chair prior to this meeting, just sharing my thoughts with you, hoping to give you some time to consider and think about what you might want to say at this meeting. And obviously Delhi has taken advantage of that. Firstly, let me say that email was not directed at any one councillor or councillors. Those were just my ideas on how we could actually possibly cut the cost to the ratepayer a little bit. And it is only rats and mice, and a little bit. In the scheme of things, it's nowhere near a wastewater plant or a rubbish dump. But it's still expenditure, and we cannot, as the chair said earlier on, keep on pinging the ratepayer forever. And we should look at making savings wherever possible, even if it is only rats and mice. And I think it sends a good signal to the public if we actually take the time just to have a look at things and see if we can do it a little better. The Remuneration Authority does set the money that certain things cost, like travel and meals and what have you. I don't believe that that is a target we should aim for. I think we should look at things prudently, and if we can do it a little cheaper, we should do so. So I made some suggestions. And while we can't make decisions at today's meeting, we can certainly ask the CEO to go away and bring a paper back to council for consideration of those ideas. Now, some of the ideas I had, and I hope you guys have thought about this as well and have got your own ideas, and bear in mind, these are only suggestions. I would like, for a start, to carpool. The current situation is that councillors bring their own car and get paid mileage. I'd like to see something considered like the 3 councillors from Whitianga obtaining a council car, perhaps coming via Coromandel, picking me up and bringing me down. If that doesn't work, then I'd be happy to take a council car from Coromandel and drive down by myself. Failing that not being acceptable to members, I'd like to suggest that perhaps we look at the rate at which we're remunerated for driving those cars. And I think an amount of about 75 cents per kilometre would be more reasonable to the ratepayer, and certainly would cover the costs of running our cars. So what I've just suggested for Coromandel and Thames, I'd suggest for the Whangamata councillors as well, as regarding carpooling goes. I'd also like to have a look at any member that's outside this area, lives outside this area but was elected in this ward, to have no mileage paid until they get to the ward boundary. That is in keeping with the Remuneration Authority's determination and should only be varied in exceptional circumstances. Regarding catering for councillors, I believe that we could look at that as well. We could look at perhaps subsidising those meals by the sum of $15. Each councillor gets that deducted from his salary at the end of each month, or any other amount that you councillors felt would be appropriate. I have never ever been supplied a lunch at any other organisation I work for, and I don't believe it's in keeping with the times we now live in. And as you all know, I'm happy with a peanut butter sandwich. Failing that, the only exception to that would be when we were hosting other councils or guests, and there was some obligation to provide them with a meal. I have no problems with doing that. That is the right thing to do. What else have I got for us, guys? These are all thoughts, just suggestions. I'm sure you've got a heap of them.
I wonder, John, if I could help you. I've seen your email actually, because you shared with me your thoughts. And I think you said at the start you're clearly wanting to sponsor a review of our sensitive expenditure policies and guidelines. I'm wondering if you would, rather than going through them individually now, you said at the start, I'd like a report from Aileen. I'm wondering if you want to move an amendment to that effect and we test the meeting.
I can actually do that, Bruce. I didn't believe I could with an information-only report.
Sorry, I'm just conscious of the process in the meeting. Yeah. If you want to move an amendment, I'd be happy to have that there, and we'll test the meeting and keep it moving.
Okay, that's fine. My purpose in actually going through those items as I did, Bruce, was hoping that other councillors would actually make some sort of suggestions as well, give Aileen a basis to actually bring a report back to the council. But hey, listen, I'll sink or swim. I'll happy to do either. So yes, I'll move that, Bruce, if you think that's a way of speeding through the process. See if there's any appetite, if there's any support. Oh, but hang on, there's more discussion on my right.
If I may, through the chair, I just want to clarify. So you said you're open for people to have discussions, but you're moving a motion. Do you want us to have the discussion first, or have you moved?
Well, what I'm trying to do is sorry, no, we've all got a strong sense of where you're wanting to go with this, which is fine. And I'm because this is the whole purpose is to report. Is partly it's accountability. It is sensitive by definition. And within the community, there are very different views. So the critical question is, are we comfortable with what we're seeing here? Is it the right level? John, you're wanting to sponsor a debate that actually our setting should change. Okay, and so I get that. So that's why I'm open to John raising his point. But all I'm trying to reflect here is he suggests the mechanism is we ask for a report, in which case I'm just trying to push that by saying, okay, fine, let's have an amendment that we actually ask for a report. Okay, so that's what I'm wanting to do. Well, that's what I'm trying to establish, Terry. Sorry? Yes, so what I mean, look, somebody can advise me better on senators. If you'd like to move the amendment.
I move it.
And do I have a seconder?
What did you say?
No seconder.
If there's no seconder, sorry, I'm trying to help you through this here, guys. If you don't want to, I'm trying to say, do you want to have a debate on it? If you do, good. If you don't, but I mean the debate that John posited at the start was, I would like to put, sorry, that I would like Aileen to come back to us with a response to John's thoughts. That's all I'm trying to get to here, John.
I was just going to say I support the chair. This is the correct process to go through. If someone wants to move a motion and someone wants to second it, then we can debate it and see whether it gets legs or not. So let's move on.
I'll move it.
And the motion will be that the chief executive is requested to review our sensitive expenditure settings.
Yes.
In line with.
That's very simple.
And yes, okay. If we treated that, I think it's fair enough. I think we've got a strong sense. So I have a mover. Do I have a seconder? I don't have a seconder, therefore the motion.
I think.
Pardon? Okay, right. Thank you. So we're back dealing with the main paper. Is there any more debate people would like to have? So I think if I've got it right, I've got Martin, Robin, and then Len. Thank you.
Yes, the fact that I didn't second it means I don't support all of John's ideas. I'm just worried that we will be taking up time and resource and money on something that is going to affect us for 1 year, and then there's going to be fresh elections and it may all get changed again. So I don't want the chief executive spending time and effort on what Councillor Morrissey has said as rats and mice, that we're within our policy, and maybe at the end of after the fresh elections next year, this could be looked at then, but not for less than 1 year.
Thank you. Robin.
My question was sort of a bigger picture than this, in that it's great to have these elected member expenses in front of us and we can see who's spending what. But the context that is missing for me is how much this is in relation to the budget that we have set in the LTP, because I don't know whether we're tracking on budget. I don't know whether we're way below, way above. I also don't know what happens when we run out of budget. So if we've set aside X and we get to X plus Y, how do we fund that? Is there just a blank, no, you can't spend anything more? So I did email Donna earlier in the week Do you have?
Donna, you're able to make a comment there?
Yes, I can through the chair. We do have what we call a catering and stores budget, which is where the catering costs for meetings and that are contained within that budget. But within that budget, there's also lots of other expenses. But what I can say is that we're tracking quite well under that budget at the moment. In regards to your question of what happens if we go over budget, well, if we go over budget, we look at the bottom line. So the budget, whilst it's a GL line, there could be plenty in there. So for that council activity, for example, there could be unders and overs within it. If by some awful circumstance something happened and we went over that budget, then how that would getting funded would be through district retained earnings. Any that district retained earnings reserve that we had, that's what would happen. But for a budget like this and of this size, it's unlikely that it would be significant enough to tip that.
This is the quarterly report, correct? I think that's the intention, Donna, is that right?
Yes, the intention there. So the intention originally was to make that the table a public document on our website. Was then subsequently asked to bring it through this committee. So we're happy to continue doing that.
So that might be worthwhile considering, as long as it's not. I hear people's desire for efficiency to understand the budget would be useful as well relative to that. Len, you've got a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just want to acknowledge Councillor Morrissey's his heart's. I know where his heart is. It's in the right place. He's trying to achieve efficiencies. I disagree completely with the intention and the proposed methodology. I'd like to tautoko what Delhi has said earlier. The carpooling is done now. I know this happens wherever possible. And I've lost count of the number of times I've seen councillors put their hands in their own pocket to cover expenses when they are at council events and community events and not claimed for them. So I believe that the expenses that are claimed by councillors fall well under what they actually spend, including me. And councillors who are spending their own time. And I think councillors are adult enough and responsible enough to make their own decisions about things like carpooling. And so I completely understand where your heart's at, Councillor Morrissey, but I'm going to support what Delhi said. And I think we are acting responsibly, and I will defend that. If the members of the public or media come to me and say, are you guys out of line? I don't think we are. I think we're a responsible council and we do a good job managing expenses. The one thing I would want to raise, please, Donna, and I think it was in an email from Councillor Gottlieb, the reimbursement of the expenses that are in the line that he's got. He did reimburse some of those expenses. Is that reflected in the line of expenses for Councillor Gottlieb?
Yes, that's correct. It is reflected.
So that is net. That is after the reimbursement, or?
I would need to double check that, but my understanding is that it would be net.
Okay, thank you. That helps to clarify that.
We just check that. That'd be great. John?
Thanks. I'll be short and sweet. I fully support Councillor Donnelly in the comments that have been made. Sorry,
Donnelly.
Yeah, getting tongue tied. But I can also suggest to Councillor Morrissey that if he has personal concerns about the level of expenses, he doesn't have to claim them, and he can make that contribution. And I am sure he could contribute to the lunch if he wants as well. But I think that these are absolutely reasonable amounts that are allowed for within this, and I think it's absolutely fair. I personally don't charge mileage because I double up on these with other work commitments, and that funds my trips here rather than having the council fund them. The thing that I would like to see in this report, which I think would be really helpful, are any expenses that have been approved outside of policy. And I know there's some discretion, but I think that there should be some general observations around anything that falls within that category. So that is a suggestion that I would like to make.
Thank you. Terry.
Yeah, thank
Sorry,
you.
didn't Delhi have a hand? I'm sorry.
I've got Valley next. I've got two.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll shut up.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you to say a few words. Yes,
By
and
the boss here.
I agree that, John, if you want to do this, is your business, but we're following the Remuneration Authority's direction, and I sign off all those expenses except the top two, and they staff check them first, and they give them to me, and we make sure that they are following the proper procedure. So I find that your comments were very nice to hear, but they didn't mean much to me at all, and I thought didn't need to have to be happen. I think we were following the rules. If we were going outside the rules, I would certainly expect somebody to speak up and say something. So I say that we're doing it as best we can, and I felt a little bit like they were pointed at one particular person who I check his and monitors expenses very carefully, and he's still working within the requirements of the authority. So I don't think there's any need to go further with this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dali.
I just want to move the report and get on with my life.
Thank you. Got to move. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, just before you do that, Bruce, there was some things said there that I would actually just like to clarify. There was never, ever anybody targeted with my suggestions, mere suggestions. To suggest otherwise actually is, quite disturbing. And I believe we operate as a team, and nobody should be singled out, no matter what their views, and I did not do that. So, I take on board your comments, John, and I do admire your stance with your expenses. But yeah, sink or swim together, that's what it's all about.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for Dali's motion? Thank you, John. Any debate on the motion? There being none, I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, is carried. Thank you very much. Can we move to the resolution to exclude the public? We've got the topics and the reasons why. I'm happy to take a move of Martin and seconded Robin. I'll put the motion. Sorry, is there any debate on that motion? That's always important. There isn't? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Thank you.